This week, first up, it's the security news. LibWebP or die. We unravel some of the details behind the WebP vulnerability first fixed by Apple and Google, then hopefully fixed by everyone else. Attackers can steal your pixels using your GPU, and I don't mean the pixel, the phone, like the actual pixels. Someone, cough, China, cough, has been hacking Cisco routers. Kia boys are still a problem. How the cult of the dead cow plans to save the internet. How iOS updates could break glucose monitors. Spamming the CVE database. And when a medium is really a high. Then we'll air our pre-recorded interview with Kayla Williams, CISO at Devo Technology, where we discuss the right skills for the right job. All that and more on this episode of Paul's Security Weekly. This is a Security Weekly production for security professionals by security professionals. Please visit securityweekly.com/subscribe to subscribe to all the shows on our network. Broadcasting live from G-Unit Studios in Rhode Island, it's the show where exploits run wild, packets aren't the only things getting sniffed, and the cocktails flow steady. It's Paul's Security Weekly. SOC analysts are often overworked and underappreciated. In fact, many consider leaving their jobs or changing careers altogether. Devo is hosting the third annual SOC Analyst Appreciation Day to pay some long overdue kudos to analysts and encourage organizations to improve their job satisfaction and mental well-being. Join Devo and other cybersecurity industry professionals on October 18th for sessions and panels focused on de-stressing, SOC career development, and more. Visit securityweekly.com/Devo to register.
And welcome to the show. But first, let me introduce you to a man who was super excited to plug this week's episode number into his calculator and turn it upside down, but was disappointed when it only said oob. Mr. Paul Asadorian.
Coming to you in super low definition compliments of Darth Vader himself, this is Paul's Security Weekly, episode number 800, being recorded on September 27th, 2023, right here in G-Unit Studios in Rhode Island. To my left, Mr. Larry Pesce.
Oh, episode 800.
800. You believe we've done this 800 or more times?
Yeah. Well, we've done this 800 roughly. We've released 800
We suck at
times.
Counting and numbering, but
yeah. And so
that's why we have computers.
I was doing the math, and because we go back and like, how many years have we been doing this? And if we did 42 episodes a year for 800 episodes, that's 19 years.
Yeah, we're doing it 18 years. So
yeah, so we're on.
We did some extra. We did a little extra work in there.
Yep. So we're on 18. Next year will be 19, right?
Right.
Oh man.
Correct.
Can you imagine? What are we gonna do for 20?
I don't know. Something.
Springsmore?
Close up shop and go home.
That's right.
No.
Drop the mic.
Yep.
I'm out.
We out.
Mr. Sam Bown is here with us. Sam, welcome.
Good evening, and congratulations on the 800 shows.
Hey, it's all possible thanks to our listeners and folks like you, Sam, who are here helping us with the news today, which is great. Thank you. Mr. Jeff Mann is here with us. Jeff, welcome.
Coming to you live from Grand Rapids, Michigan, where I would ordinarily be at Z's, hanging out with all the people showing up for GERCON, but I couldn't miss the 800th episode, so I found a spot in the back of my hotel where I have a cigar, I have some Detroit Distillery whiskey, and I'm ready to do the news.
And you have a wall behind you, which is nice.
It's blocking the wind, so it cuts down on any ambient noise.
I like it. It's actually a really nice background. People pay a lot of money for backgrounds like that. Mr. Josh Marpet is here with us. Josh, welcome.
Speaking of paying lots of money for backgrounds.
Thank you, and I've got a little visitor for a few minutes at least.
And offspring.
A few minutes. She'll get taken in a sec. Stop whining.
Is Lee Neely joining us, or
he will be joining at the
late
end of the first hour?
Okay, that's good to know. So we hold off on some of the things that he wanted to cover. I got an announcement.
I had an announcement.
Yeah,
too,
I don't know where your announcement is.
I have an announcement too.
All right, everyone has announcements.
All right,
and
Paul,
after
you
the
first.
After the announcement, we're just going to wrap the show. So
yeah,
that's as a member of the Security Weekly community, they're pleased to offer you 50% off your AIDC 2023 tickets using the code CRA50OFF. Join them on October 4th, 2023 in Pentagon City. ICIT, the nation's #1 cybersecurity think tank, brings together America's leading minds to discuss AI's impacts on the country. Register today at securityweekly.com/AIDC 2023. All right. That was the first announcement.
Jeff,
Jeff,
go ahead.
Jeff, you have an announcement.
Because Renee is working on mine right now.
Oh, okay.
All right, stall. I was just going to mention, obviously, I said I'm here at GERCON this week. Next weekend, I will be at CornCon in beautiful Davenport, Iowa, where there's going to be a bunch of the old timers gathering. So I'm looking forward to that. If you happen to be in the Midwest, come on out to CornCon.
Larry, you had an announcement about your teaching stuff.
Is it?
If she's not ready, I could give another announcement or tell a story.
No, we'll be ready. We'll put it up a little later or something, but I'll at least talk about it. I got a couple of upcoming speaking events, and some of them are a little bit different. One, webcast on the 2023 State of Cybersecurity for Medical Devices and Healthcare. That myself at Finite State and our partner Securin put together, and it's pretty disturbing. But you can go register for that at tinyurl.com/fs-meddev, MEDDEV, and that's all in uppercase. And then the other fun one, like I'm going to speak somewhere in person in Redondo Beach or Torrance, California, from somewhere between October 17th and 18th at the 7th Annual Auto ISAC Cybersecurity Summit for a talk entitled Securing the Automotive Software Supply Chain, Enhancing Case Security and Regulatory Compliance in a Connected Era. That's a lot of words.
It's a lot of words.
And tinyurl.com/fs-AI SAC, SAC.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm going to have to interrupt for 1 second. Larry, can you take your glasses off for a second? Okay, who's the guy in the picture?
It's Steven Seagal.
Okay.
It's AI-generated
It's
me.
AI Larry.
Yeah, it's AI-generated
Larry.
me.
This is Larry.
I was wondering.
That's
because it looks
AI
like
Larry.
you hired some British actor of Shakespeare and like CAD files and Masterpiece Theater to act as you. And I was like, I mean, that's a cool idea, but
I mean, arguably, it's got the gray beard. It's got the gray, longish hair. I think I asked it for an older cyberpunk type of person, and that's kind of what I got. And the face isn't all that wrong, just not wearing glasses.
No, it's not all that. The scary part is it's not all that wrong. It's close.
It's and it looks better than any photograph I'd actually have taken of me. So.
Well,
the problem is that guy's going to show up and start taking your talks. But no, I'm Larry. She's not.
You should try the same thing for your resume.
Oh,
just AI generate the resume.
That's not bad.
Yeah. Make a better resume for me.
Yeah.
I mean, that's probably not. I mean, as long as you edit it afterwards, probably not a bad idea. I mean, it's worth a try, right? I think it's good stuff like that. Taking stuff and putting it in a document kind of thing. Like taking stuff that's already out there, because like what you did should be out there. It should be able to collect that and summarize it. I think the LLMs are pretty good at that. Depends on what and how you ask it, I think. But in any case,
you have to say please. You have to ask nicely.
No, I think there was a paper, an article I saw, something like the AIs really don't care if you're mean to them or not, because like they don't have feelings. So.
Oh, and I should clarify. I'm speaking at CornCon next week.
Oh, okay.
Since these were speaking announcements, they have a CISO summit. I think they're calling it the first day, and I'm speaking there to a bunch of CISOs, and then I'll be speaking at the regular con as well. So I have a double engagement next weekend.
Excellent. So Sam, I think you and I had this article in common, and this was just broke like today, I saw. And the GitHub repo associated with this research was put up yesterday, so I think this is pretty new, hot off the presses. GPUs from all major suppliers are vulnerable to new pixel stealing attack. That's the headline.
Yep.
The details are very interesting, to say the least. So I link to the paper, which also has a link to the GitHub repo. And I'll just tell you, like, where I guess we should describe the attack. So essentially, without a lot of software enablement, the GPU is doing some caching of images and compression of those images. In that process, there is a leak such that the execution of this attack is I could have two browser tabs open, one website A, website B. Website A can then read the images from website B. Did I get that right, Sam? Sort of?
Oh, the one I said you had to open one of them in a iframe.
Oh, okay. So it could be an iframe is like, right.
And it's able to violate the same origin policy. The website in the iframe is able to read pixels from the other one, or vice versa, despite the same origin policy because of the compression side channel.
Right. It is a compression side channel attack, which I like to read the related works when I read a research paper because I want to see what other research they thought was pertinent to their paper or that they borrowed on and or built on, because I think we find a lot of things are not necessarily new. And that's certainly the case when we look at compression algorithms. I think they talked about Huffman coding dating back to 1952. They get that right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's really old.
Yeah.
And we've already had Beast and Crime. There's been a whole series of these attacks.
Yeah.
Anytime you compress something, you leak information about it out in the size of the compressed data.
Echo Party 2012, two researchers gave a presentation. Their slides are awesome. Like if you understand fundamentals about some of these compressions, so you got deflate, but deflate uses LZ77. Did I get that right?
Something like that.
And Huffman coding. And I think it's the LZ77 was from 1977. And then there was a 2002 paper that Kelsey guy wrote, the 2002 paper. Are you familiar with the 2002 paper, the Kelsey paper? That's very.
No, I don't know the details.
Very pertinent in this line of research. Got to read the Kelsey paper. And then basically they talk about this Echo Party presentation, which is awesome. So I'm like, I was reading through the slides. I'm like, these are really good. I'm like, I want to watch the actual video. And I found the actual YouTube video, and it's all in Spanish. Like, damn it.
So you need subtitles and auto translation.
I
ChatGPT
started clicking the closed caption thing, and it says it's not available for this video kind of thing. And then I was like, okay, this isn't. I got to get back to writing up my stories for this week. But so after they list these other related works, Crime and Beast, as Sam astutely points out, are previous research that is in the same realm. They say, now after they list all of the previous works, right? They say, relative to the above work, this paper is the first to study the security implications of and build compression ratio attacks underpinned by software transparent lossless compression in the wild. Software transparent lossless compression is an insidious new threat that opens new attack scenarios beyond what's available to an attacker, exploiting software visible compression. That's a pretty bold statement, in my opinion.
Yeah, it sounds sort of like Spectre and Meltdown.
A couple clarification questions, if I may. You were saying it has to do with iframes. Does the second website then infer that it's the website that has the iframe embedded in it is the one that can read or bleed? The iframe will bleed back to the original web server. Is that the intent?
I'm not sure which way it goes.
Okay. And I guess my second question is, are we only talking about pixels, or are we talking about any data that gets compressed within the iframe?
In principle, any data, because it can just get the pixels, but it takes a long time to get a lot of information. I think it took them like a half hour on one device and a couple hours on another to get a reproduction of a little image that was like 95% correct. So they can reproduce the image and see like a password you typed into there, that sort of thing.
Well, a password, and the reason I'm asking, let's jump to PCI right away. Many e-commerce sites these days are, when you get to the payment page, that's very often served in an iframe. So when you're typing in your credit card information, that's all in the iframe being redirected to the payment processor, not the website, the e-commerce site itself. But if there's a potential here for that type of data to leak back, that's a pretty big deal.
I think that's exactly the potential that's here.
That's a great attack scenario, Jeff.
Great,
certainly.
great and disturbing.
Yeah.
One thing I didn't notice here is when is a patch coming out? What exactly would be patched? Did you find that, Paul?
No, basically the paper said that every single GPU manufacturer, Intel, NVIDIA, AMD, obviously being the representing most of the market there, have not released any fixes for it. The fixes are very difficult. From what I gathered from the paper, like just turning this feature off that does this basically hardware assisted compression is like not an easy thing. You don't want to turn it off. I don't know how much of a performance impact it has or what other repercussions it has, but it's bad.
That's why I think it's just like Spectre and Meltdown. They've cut a corner for performance that ends up having bad security consequences.
Yes, in that they are, well, and I think there's more commonalities there. I think Spectre and maybe not so much Spectre and Meltdown, because there was other micro-architectural vulnerabilities before Spectre and Meltdown. Spectre and Meltdown got a lot of attention. In this particular attack, I feel like we're still on the early days of the research side. Like, I feel like there's a Spectre and Meltdown moment that's going to happen with this research where it's further along and it gets a lot more eyeballs on it. And then I think eventually my example is where we are down the road is with Zenbleed, where you can compile, get a binary and run it, and you're looking at, data from other processes that you shouldn't be able to see.
If it's a GPU security vulnerability, it may have consequences for AI and other non-graphics GPU activities.
It could, for sure.
I don't see that because it's a pixel stealing. And I mean...
That's how they implemented it. But
right.
I mean, if it's stealing a pixel from a GPU, that means it's stealing the output of the GPU. And if the GPU was doing math, I bet it'd be able to steal the output of the math too.
Well, I think it was specific to compression, though. That was the side channel leak. So
that's a good point.
It's leaking whatever it's compressing. It happens to be compressing images. It could be compressing other things and leaking, but...
Yeah, but AI stuff isn't really compressed. So, yeah, I agree with you, Paul.
Well, I think, we think of compression as only being in places where you would expect, but the whole beast in crime was attacking TLS and SSL with the compression side of things. So things are compressed behind the scenes for a better user experience. Under the covers, it's these very, very old protocols, right? I think it was the I think I read that in the slides.
It's more like an algorithm than a protocol.
No, you're right.
So I wonder if fixing this would require replacing the GPUs. That won't be popular.
I mean, they'll replace them pretty soon anyways, right? Because then when the next big one comes out for the gamers, like everybody will replace them.
Well,
there's a shortage of them, and they're pretty expensive. So I don't know.
Not with the price. Yeah, I was going to say not with the pricing that GPUs are at. I mean, what 4090s, which are the top of the line right now. I think. Am I correct? 4090s are right up there.
Yes.
They're well over $1,000. Like they were $2,000 or $3,000 at one point. Now they're like down to I think 11 or 1,200. But that's a pretty significant investment for just your GPU.
Agreed.
Mind you, if you're doing AI processing, you're easy dropping 10, 20, 30 grand on GPUs alone. But then because they're so expensive, you're handing them down to projects that are behind you in funding lines.
A lot more than that. I heard of an AI company that got like a several $1 million round of funding, and they said they spent 90% of it just on GPUs.
Sorry, it is.
Doesn't surprise me.
I just want to go back to one of the compression LZ77 is a lossless data compression algorithm. Abraham Lempel and Jacob Ziv LZ developed it in 1977.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yes. Anyway,
It had a good run.
well, I don't think it's necessarily broken. They both
Well,
contribute.
like everything else, it's probably an implementation.
It could be.
problem.
I mean, the point is the compression works. It makes the data smaller in a lossless way. Now, they chose to compress something where they couldn't afford having that information leak out.
Right. Correct. Yeah, compression doesn't equal privacy or secrecy, right? It's just taking something big, making it small.
Right. It's encoding, which is not considered cryptographic.
Correct.
Yeah.
Says the NSA cryptanalyst. And thus the truth came down from the mountain.
I have spoken.
I know. I'm sorry, Jeff. You're right. Please don't get me wrong. You're absolutely 100% right. But I just thought it was really funny. And that's encoding, which is not cryptology, not cryptography. Do not try that. It will not work. Do not try this at home. Thank you. Your mileage may vary. Supplies are limited. Act now.
Now, Larry, I sent this article to you earlier that NSA, FBI, CISA, and Japanese partners release advisory on PRC-linked cyber actors. Did you happen to read the article?
Was this the hidden router firmware?
Yes.
Yeah, so I started reading some of this stuff, and I'm like, oh, yeah, this is awesome, because it's going to be like all these home routers. Nope,
Oh.
Cisco. Oh. Yeah.
So they've observed in the wild this Black Tech is the name of the group. Cyber actors known as Black Tech. And several interesting things here. They're able to compromise a Cisco, basically Cisco routers, and through many different techniques. Okay, so they get old legitimate firmware, and that's the firmware that's flashed. So similar to Black Lotus, you're taking something that isn't vulnerable and replacing it with something that is vulnerable in order to leverage that vulnerable piece of software to then modify the firmware. The firmware has all kinds of nasty stuff in it, but then use the modified firmware to modify the bootloader. Bootloader allows modified firmware to continue evading the router security features for persistence across reboots. So they're tampering with both the firmware and the bootloader to maintain this. Now, Cisco does have some form of secure boot, and I should have done more research on this, that should prevent this from happening. But the question becomes, I mean, I don't know what the answer is in terms of exactly how Cisco's secure boot would work. I would imagine that they developed it to prevent against this exact style of attack where someone's replacing firmware and replacing the bootloader. Like, that's the whole purpose of secure boot is to make sure that backdoored stuff, vulnerable stuff, doesn't end up in the bootloader.
But there's a lot of old Cisco hardware out there.
That's the theory, is that they're going after devices that are older and don't have secure boot, or the person hasn't turned on secure boot. I'm not so sure. I should have talked to someone that does Cisco on a day-to-day basis.
So you know, thinking about this too, and I was just reading some documents on secure boot the other day, that at least the implementation that I was looking at for secure boot, the firmware image, whether or not you have it turned on, the image that you're booting has to support it as well.
Yes.
Through a bunch of flags and components in the ELF header.
Okay.
So if you have an image that doesn't support secure boot, based on the lack of items in the ELF header, will it still boot?
And again, I don't know what
to a boot state.
Yeah, I'm not. Excuse me. I'm not sure what secure boot process or implementation Cisco's using, right? Because when we say secure boot, people automatically go to UEFI secure boot. I don't think it's UEFI secure boot on Cisco devices. I mean, maybe some do sometimes. I mean, Cisco makes a lot of products and has made a lot of products for a really long time. So the answer to some of our questions at least starts with, it depends.
Yeah.
Right.
And no, I don't wear them. Right. Reading and looking at CISA's announcement, so Black Tech actors target branch routers, typically smaller appliances using
that.
branch offices. So smaller stuff that I'd argue that is in the what Cisco used to have, not the consumer line like Cisco Linksys, but not the pro super expensive stuff. They had like a prosumer line.
Was it Cisco Small Business?
Yeah, like some of that stuff. And like, if I remember correctly, a lot of that stuff was all acquisition of another company.
Mm-hmm.
So it was probably, I wouldn't be surprised if the iOS was hastily ported to that and or is using emulation. Because I've seen that. Like
Cisco Secure Boot is not UEFI. It's their own proprietary.
Okay.
according to their docs, places the root of trust in a hardware chip device on a circuit card where it cannot be changed. The microloader code, the first code that executes immediately after power on, is guaranteed to be legitimate code from Cisco, programmed during the time of system manufacturing.
So these may have been not
Sounds like a
manufactured.
challenge to me.
Well, Cisco has an advantage in this realm, different from the Intel, where Intel is providing the chip and instructions to say, like, here's how you enable secure boot, and the TPM comes from another manufacturer, and the OEM is putting that all together, and your mileage varies as to whether or not they got it right and or lost a key and or leaked 3.7 terabytes of data, a la MSI or others, right? In Cisco's example, they own all the hardware, firmware, and software. I mean, they don't own it, but they're the sole party responsible for putting it all together. So, Josh, their statement is pretty accurate, right? I mean, unless there's supply chain leaks in hardware, which we've seen actually with Cisco devices or counterfeit Cisco devices. That stuff aside, for the most part, they can do a pretty good job on securing secure boot because they own the ecosystem. So,
yeah, but I mean, all it takes is somebody to crack that guaranteed legitimate Cisco image, and then it's all over, game over.
Well, they would also need the private key. I mean, barring other attacks that could circumvent this kind of stuff.
And we've never seen private keys get compromised. I mean, never. They are 100% perfect.
Yep. Yes, we have seen private keys leak, but there's a big stakes when we talk about the private key that Cisco uses to verify boot images in their secure boot, the private keys that are used to sign third-party UEFI secure boot things, right? The keys that Intel has that the public ones are burned on the chips to validate things like microcode updates, for example. I mean, we haven't seen those. I hope, like, knock on wood, it would be a really bad day for everyone if those, like, certain keys held by really large companies like Cisco, Microsoft, Apple, Intel, maybe Google as well. There's keys that, like, it would be a bad day for a lot of people if those keys leaked. Like, I'm running under the assumption, right, that stuff hasn't happened. It's when they have to share keys, or OEMs or other people downstream in the supply chain have to generate keys to, like, complete the manufacturing process. That's where we've seen keys leak.
Yeah, but Gauss, and actually it's a good point, Gauss on the Discord has just said that key is sitting in a repo at Tata or Infosys. And I went, that's actually not a stupid point. That's probably pretty true.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, it's correct. Yeah, I'm
so
sure.
The more places you have a key, the more places a key can leak from. I'm just going to point out.
Well,
I'm not saying it has. I'm not saying it will.
Yeah.
I'm just saying it can. We deal in possibilities.
They're also not very forthcoming with exactly how those keys are protected, and for a good reason.
Right.
I think. I actually don't fault them for
proprietary
that,
encryption
right?
works.
I knew Jeff would do that.
I knew I would hear Jeff and Larry go, oh,
Yeah.
Security,
I mean, it works.
Obscurity.
I mean, it works
It's
for
like
a while.
charm.
It works for a
Until
while.
it doesn't.
Exactly.
Well, now, but Cisco did not state that they have proprietary encryption.
I know. I'm just.
They
fucking
said
I
a
couldn't resist.
proprietary secure boot process, which we all hope, right, is using encryption that's been battle tested, right? They haven't made their own algorithms. It's been battle tested, and they have a process for putting those pieces together. I hope.
I mean, it's Cisco, so I do have a little bit of faith in that.
So all these groups put out advisories. Did they talk about mitigations?
Oh, yeah, and I love one of them. Monitor changes to firmware. Periodically take snapshots of boot records and firmware and compare against known good images. There was only a security company out there that did that kind of thing for people. Like
That was not a softball to you.
I know you didn't think it was going to be, but I read the paper and I was like, I'm like, wait, I work Eclipsium. That's right.
Oh, yeah.
I work for the company that we do. That's exactly one of the things that we do. And I'm biased, but I think we do it really well. But Also, very hard to do that for everything across the board, right?
Sure.
Like your mileage is also gonna vary for comparing against known good images. That means you have a lot of known good images to get the most coverage, right? But that's one of the things. As I was reading through this attack, Jeff, it was very telling to like what we do at Eclipsium in terms of how I protect my bootloader. I'll give this as an example, right? It's not Cisco specific, but I think it's a really great analogy. Is my UEFI and or bootloader, right? UEFI is a little better of an example because let's say there's a manufacturer like MSI, just as an example, that produced a laptop that was for sale in 2020, which I bought, and Tyler said it was a good laptop, and it is. It's a good laptop. I like the laptop. It's a solid recommendation. However, they have not produced a UEFI update for it since 2020. Now, if there are vulnerabilities in that, which I believe there are, I will be vulnerable to those because there's no update for me. There's really no way for a human being to fix that. I mean, there might be a small number of people on the planet that could go in there and fix it, but it's...
And you probably work with them.
I probably work with them. And also, like, you would need information from the OEM in order to make these updates, right? I think I've said this on the show before. So what do? I take a snapshot in time. This is my UEFI and all of its components, and it creates a known good state, a baseline. That's what we call it. Baselining is exactly what we call it. It creates a baseline. If at any point in time in the future it deviates from that baseline, I've configured it to give me an alert. Like, I want to know. Because if there's no update from the manufacturer and my firmware has changed, then something is amiss. Same thing with my bootloader. If my bootloader changed, but I haven't updated my operating system, what's going on with my, in most environments, that is an event that should cause you to do some investigation, right?
Yep.
I mean, us on our personal laptops, different story. We might change the bootloader, we might mess with the bootloader, we might put custom bootloaders, whatever. I understand that happens, but in like most other cases, not so much. So I'm on the bootloader, same thing. If bootloader changes, I get an alert. That's what CISA is also recommending you do for your Cisco routers in this case.
I have a silly question, perhaps, but how often are people needing to reboot Cisco routers or other network gear these days?
Gosh.
Ooh.
What, every time they do an update?
Hopefully only they do. Hopefully never.
Yeah,
hopefully never.
And maybe
never. The right answer is
never.
Yeah.
And maybe not even when they do an update anymore.
Well, that's kind of what I'm leaning towards is, how much of a problem is this? Unless, of course, you have a scenario where you're trying to use this as an exploit and you create a scenario that either forces a reboot or forces them to believe that they need to do a reboot.
Well, I mean, in this particular case, Jeff, I would definitely think that the adversary is going to perform a reboot if they're mucking with the bootloader to get this the new iOS version to run.
Mm-hmm.
They've got to reboot it to get it to execute the bootloader.
correct.
Right.
So in this particular case, and they're doing all this via console access with some privilege.
Also, I believe in reading this description that the attackers know they're going to cause a disruption. That they know they have to reboot the router, Jeff, because once the router is rebooted, they've backdoored and or trojaned the utilities on the Cisco router so that when an administrator goes in our example, that router rebooted, that was really weird. Let me go log in and take a look at the logs and see what's going on. When they do that, the modifications the attackers have made hides their activity. Mm-hmm. So I immediately had a throwback to when attackers in like Unix days used to give you a new Netstat command
Yep.
And that new Netstat command showed you all the processes, what ports they were listing on, except for the backdoor that they installed. Would never show up.
Rootkit the Netstat,
It's
right?
a rootkit. It's a rootkit. It's basically like a rootkit. And that's what they've done on Cisco routers, which is really actually impressive because I've not seen a whole ton of recent security research on Cisco iOS. Have you? I mean, we talked about it a lot back in the day. There was researchers doing that research. I haven't really seen a whole bunch of stuff published about that, which is, I thought, the other interesting thing about this article, story, paper.
Yeah. Now,
advisory.
and we think about back to the olden days too. Like, if this was China and they're doing that type of research, what level of access do they have to Cisco iOS or Cisco iOS source code for the particular versions? Because we think back to stuff when FX from Fenelit.
That's who it was.
Looking at Cisco router
I was
stuff.
trying to think of his
Yes. And he wasn't looking at Cisco router stuff. He was looking at Huawei.
Right.
When he started logging into Huawei stuff, it was literally ripped off Cisco iOS.
Right.
Where they
Just
searched
double checking. You know it's not pronounced like that.
It's
What?
it's Huawei.
Huawei.
Huawei. Okay, just double checking.
Yeah, Huawei. Sorry, I think I blame the bourbon.
Teleprompter.
And it's GNOME.
Oh.
Not GNOME, it's GNOME.
Shut the hell up.
Look it up. I'm telling you. It's GNOME.
And the thing that's spelled EMACS is actually pronounced V.
Yeah. And if you listen to Linus Torvalds, he pronounces Linux. Linux. Do you remember that from
He's
his
wrong.
website?
I do.
Okay.
I do. I remember that.
Pronounce Linux.
He's just wrong. It's not a big deal. I'll tell him he's wrong.
Yeah.
You let me know how that works out. What were we saying? Oh, yeah. They had access to a hot air rework station and a flash chip reader to pull the software off and reverse engineer, or Cisco's lost source code.
I wouldn't
which,
be.
I mean,
I wouldn't
they
be,
have in the past.
Yep,
I mean,
I
I'm not faulting them for it. I'm like,
Yep. I don't know in that case, but it was pretty clear that what FX was finding when he was when he was looking at that stuff, that they basically went and did a search and replace Cisco with Huawei, and they missed a bunch of spots.
Right.
So that could have been done with like binary patch or something.
Cisco did the same thing and tried to replace BSD with iOS and missed it in a couple spots.
Oh boy.
So there's that.
It all comes full circle.
It all comes full circle.
Oh boy.
Did you want to talk about glucose monitoring?
Sure.
Let's go there next.
Sure. So I came across this story last week and didn't have a good story about it. It was only from the manufacturer's website, but then someone else sort of wrote it up. The big one here is that Abbott, the maker of the Freestyle Libre 3, continuous glucose monitoring thing. So if you've watched morning television, you've seen the ads. It's the little puck that you put under your arm, in the fatty part of your arm, to measure fat sugar over time and how your sugar for your blood actually affects your fat. So you can do, so you know when you maybe need to dispense some insulin. You can keep track at very accurate levels, and it can also do some predictive lows. So if it can see a downward trend and you're headed to bed, it can sort of see that you're going to predict down low and that maybe you should do something about this before you go to bed so you don't die.
So, sorry, this is a patch that you wear at all times.
Yep. So it is a patch, but it does have an implanted sensor, as it were.
Okay.
So when you click the thing, it basically shoots this like nanowire into your arm.
Okay, so injection on site, so it can monitor your blood sugar levels.
Correct.
And then there's a transmitter in it.
Yep. Then a transmitter goes on to that little patch, and then that is received by either a station or your phone.
And you wear the transmitter at all times?
Yes.
Or, okay. And then, and it talks some protocol
some wireless protocol. Most likely Bluetooth
low energy would be my guess.
Yep.
But yeah, okay.
I do not have one,
is.
so I can't confirm.
Yep.
But it is likely
It is Bluetooth low energy. Although one version it was NFC, I remember. Janice, my wife, has used those extensively. and she has a lot of things to talk about with that stuff. But for example, with the version 1 of them, the actual receiver, which is a little box,
a little station
that basically tells you, little station, thank you. And it also, by the way, the little station also takes blood sticks to calibrate it.
Yep.
Because everybody's interstitial fluid is different.
Oh wait,
you
so
have to use...
I'm sorry, the transmitter in your patch talks to a base station, then the base station talks to your phone?
Older version.
No.
That's the older version. Okay.
The older version of the base station is a standalone unit, and it's portable. And it actually still took strips where you'd finger prick and then put blood on the strip and then feed it into this thing, so it could calibrate the readings from the transmitter.
Yep. So it could calculate the differences, but between your actual blood sugar and your interstitial fat sugar.
Yeah, and because the blood stick is, and we've got a picture of one in the chat in Discord. So if anybody wants to see it, that's the old one. It was so bad that my wife actually used various apps that were built by people and open sourced because they were much more accurate.
Yep.
And the new one has encrypted transmission so that it won't work with any of the apps.
Yeah, and that's
off.
And that's the version 3, right, Josh? Is the encrypted.
Is it version 3 is the latest
So
one?
yeah,
Okay,
three is the latest one. I think
And
two was the NFC.
Is this what Jay Radcliffe was talking about back in the day?
Yes, he was likely looking, and I don't remember which company.
Right.
I think I do know what company he was looking at, and I may have done work for them, so I'm under non-disclosure.
Gotcha.
So, yeah. But one of the manufacturers, yes, was using a proprietary RF technology to their base station, so it would have been in the version 1 version of the Freestyle Libre. And Josh, you're correct. I think the version 2 was NFC, so you were not getting. Yeah. It's called a continuous glucose monitor, but it wasn't continuous. You only got a reading when you tapped your phone underneath your arm. So yeah.
The Dexcom G7 is the only one that's actually registered as a CGM. It's a continuous glucose monitor.
Yep.
But now, though,
I forget what
the more recent ones now, though, require an app on your phone.
Yep.
And was it the recommendation of the company that to not update the iOS on your phone because it was incompatible?
So this is the part that really cheeses me off. So Abbott all of a sudden came out last week and said, "Oh my God, iOS 17 is here." For all of the Freestyle Libre 3 customers, you need to go turn off automatic updates on your phone for a couple of reasons. Well, so you don't get any updates, and so you don't get iOS 17. But they make no indication that they will notify you when you should turn it back on. And in the current state of iOS, no-click stuff, that's a really bad recommendation.
Really bad.
Really bad. And the part that really cheeses me off about this whole thing is that they're, oh my God, iOS 17 is coming out tomorrow. Go turn off your updates because this may break the actual messages that you receive because of some of the new features in iOS about automatic sleep and automatic sleep on the phone and that type of stuff. But the thing that drives me nuts is that Abbott has, as an app developer, has had access to the iOS 17 developer kit and the developer resources for months.
Okay, because I was before you said that last part. Yeah, I was like, do we blame Apple or do we blame the manufacturer? But after that last part, I'm leaning towards the manufacturer.
Yeah, Apple.
You absolutely blame the manufacturer, and I'll tell you why. And I'm sorry, Larry, I don't mean to step on you. I apologize.
No, go ahead.
They make it so that their low glucose alerts are unstoppable. You literally cannot turn them off unless you de-authenticate the device from Bluetooth, unless you have to go crazy to turn off the low glucose alarms. And if you do so, the app on the phone goes crazy and keeps alerting you, trying to reestablish connection with the device, thinking you're gonna die. And it's like, yeah, that's great, but what if there's something I need to do, like A, sleep, or B, not be in an active shooter situation? Okay, there are legitimate concerns about this both ways. And so Abbott has not been able to pressure Apple into letting them have an override on the what is it, auto sleep? I forget what they call it.
Yeah, well, so they have recommended that you can configure your iPhone to disable that. Let me go back and look at the article here.
Disable auto sleep.
It was in here. If you've already upgraded, disable standby mode, which activates the lock screen when it's charging and placed on its side. They're also being advised to turn off assistive access mode, accessibility mode for people with disabilities. So effectively they say, if you've already upgraded to iOS 17, go turn these two features off, because that's what messes with the alerts.
Yeah, which tells me that they did have access to the developers kit, and they've had issues, and they haven't been able to fix it yet. And one might posit that the specific issues are with the things that they're telling you to turn off and disable.
Agreed, Jeff.
Yep. Now, of course, they don't say whether actually doing the turning off assistive access and standby mode actually fixes the root of the problem here. That is more of a reactive, oh crap, you've already upgraded, do this so that you allegedly don't die. Yeah.
Right.
So, I mean, I get that these devices are being held to a much higher standard, and they're actually, based on the naming, Josh, Abbott refers to this as continuous glucose monitoring, or CGM. So at that point, where it potentially becomes a life-saving device and a medical device at that, the FDA is very much involved in how often they can do updates. So, that said, can they actually do updates to the app based on what the FDA has to review for those updates or not?
Yes, the FDA, and I actually went through this with computers that are attached to X-ray machines.
Yep.
For example, most X-ray machine companies lease the machines to the facility, to the veterinarian, the doctor, the whatever, and that lease includes the computer, the head-end computer of the X-ray machine. And these companies have less than a clue, because they're still sending out Windows 7 computers. I mean, and those are totally secure, right? No problem with that. Cringe, twitch. And in fact, the FDA has stated that they're allowed to do critical updates, especially security updates, in order to not allow medical information to be at risk. Okay, I'm probably mangling the verbiage, but the idea is there.
Right.
They choose to believe that this way they don't have to do updates, because the FDA has to. Their thought process is the FDA has to approve clear our system for use. Any update we do, they have to clear. Therefore, we're just not going to update it. We're going to freeze configuration. That's not true. The FDA has stated that, unless I'm wrong, please somebody tell me if I'm wrong. But the FDA has stated if you have to do an update for a critical security flaw, vulnerability, whatever,
you can do it.
You absolutely can do it. It's not a problem. If it doesn't impact the security of the information that you're protecting, the HIPAA information, the PHI, that kind of thing, then there's no problem.
That's a great reason to use Windows 7, because there are no critical updates coming out from Windows 7 anymore. Problem solved.
That is the most brilliant weasel wording I've ever heard, Jeff. I am so proud of you and disgusted at the same time.
So, Josh, back when I was in healthcare, it may have been different, and the FDA may have changed their stance on it. But we had Windows systems, because they were connected to patient healthcare devices, that could not be updated until the manufacturer, the supplier of those PCs, as it were, released updates that had been approved by the FDA, and they were sometimes on a 6 to 18 month delay for the FDA to approve those Windows patches.
Right.
And I'm hoping that has changed, because that was a freaking nightmare.
As I understand it, it has. It's an automatic. If it's a critical security update, it's going to imperil. Like, if you don't do it, it's going to imperil PHI.
Yep.
And it doesn't affect the security. Like, if you don't do it, it's bad, and if you do it, it's a no big deal. Then go ahead and do it.
Right. Now,
but because the companies are still in the mindset of what you're talking about when they had to do it that way, they just don't do it.
Yeah. And back in the day, when I was dealing with it, I think it was less about the dissemination of PHI. It was more about patient safety. That by doing those updates, you could potentially impact the operation of the program, which could impact patient safety.
So I don't know enough about medical devices, but do these Windows devices have to be connected to the internet? That would seem like the obvious mitigation.
Well, not so much the internet, but sorry, Larry,
go ahead.
Step on you, because I have these conversations. Well, I ask my wife questions, who works in a hospital, and I don't want to get her in trouble either. But I often ask very similar questions about connectivity. I'm like, wait, how do those images get from here to there, and how do you recall this one? And basically, it all goes over the network, Sam.
Yeah, the local.
Is the local network to go from like pulling archives to doctor reading. Whoever is involved with the patient should have access to that patient's records and pertinent information for that patient. Right?
Yep.
Epic is the software that goes through one of the things it does go through great lengths to make sure you stay in your lane as a healthcare and you're not violating HIPAA or looking at records that you don't need access to for privacy reasons. So,
just about any EMR nowadays does that.
Right. Yeah. And there's all different systems, and they're all connected, and they pull images. There's PACS. PACS is one of those systems. The internet access would be interesting. Do they send them electronically to other offices?
Yes, but it typically is initiated from the PACS.
Okay,
or it's through Epic or through the EMR that then sends them, because absolutely.
And does that go to other
other facilities over the internet?
Facilities not owned by the same healthcare. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
So when you send information, when you send records across the internet to another facility, let's say from one healthcare system to another, they send them in standard accepted formats. And especially, it's sort of like O365 with encrypted email. If you're on the same EMR, it just transfers it over to the same, the other instance of the same EMR. So if both of them are running Epic or both of them are running Cerner, it's actually pretty easy.
Yep.
I mean, I think we've established that the local area networks are likely connected to the internet.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, in Maryland, I don't know, it's been a couple years now. There's like a Maryland healthcare system where it's a website that I can log into, and if I've had tests performed anywhere, x-rays, whatever, it gets dumped into this website that's maintained by the state that I can see my results immediately, and they're also getting sent to the doctors that are doing the interpretation and the reading and such, and their reports will get updated as well, and that's where you can't usually read it and make sense of it, 'cause, you have to look up every word that they're using and all the codes and everything. But it's all up there, so it's all internet connected.
That's a state-based health information exchange, or HIE.
Yep.
Delaware has one. Everybody in Delaware is in the same HIE. Yep. Maryland has one or two.
I helped build the one here in Rhode Island.
I'm only on one, so I don't know if there's another one.
Okay.
I don't know.
But a lot of states have state-based HIEs for exactly that reason, and it is so lovely that you can do that, and it's easy. Like, you can get all your health records in one spot. Nobody can charge you for them, etc.
Yeah, I mean, I want to know if I'm dying right away, not wait for 2 weeks for the doctor to get around to call me. That's fair.
Yep.
Totally. As he smokes a cigar.
This is but the main crux of this issue is I don't want to see us being held back on things like iOS updates,
right? When
there's zero-click exploits and things running around.
Yep.
But also, I don't want people to die. So I'm very conflicted at this moment in time.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, so I mean, I get it, and there's a little bit part of it I get, and back to they had plenty of time to address it.
Yeah.
It looks like they didn't, or
couldn't.
Couldn't. But they're
not done yet.
Or they're not done yet. But I think the biggest failure is they told people to turn off automatic updates and made no indication whether, hey, we turned this off, but it's only temporary. Just turn this off and never turn it back on again. That was kind of what users were led down the path of. Just turn this shit off and you're fine.
But I think there was a discussion with legal.
Oh, I'm sure.
Was like, you need to tell people to turn off those updates so that we're not held liable. So if someone tries to come and sue us, we can get, hey, look, we told you to turn that stuff off.
Yep.
If you missed some alerts and someone got hurt or died, it's not our fault. We told you to turn that stuff off. We told you not to update that. That's why they're saying that.
That's a legal case that I don't know if it has been tried yet.
Yeah.
That will be some interesting,
certainly,
legal tap dancing.
I know. I'm also guessing that you say that, Jeff, that in that same conversation with this company and their legal team, they were like, hey, we don't want to be the test case for this kind of lawsuit either. Right? No one wants to be the test case.
No, not at all. but I would guess that they're deferring to let's make sure people stay alive, because that's the worse lawsuit than simply, oh, my phone or whatever was vulnerable to a critical flaw and something else happened.
Yep.
But I still knew whether I was going to die or not, and I was able to take my insulin, and I'm okay.
And on the way here, I'm listening to If It's Smart, It's Vulnerable from Miko Bonin.
Mm-hmm.
And he just talked about this whole thing about that if you have a smart washing machine in your house and it catches fire, they're liable. And if you get electrocuted when you touch the outside of it, they're liable. But if the smart device gets hacked because you didn't put it on your network properly, and it crypto lockers all of your computers in your house, they're not liable. So, like in this particular case, if they tell you to turn off this stuff and don't get updates, and your phone gets pwned, I'd argue they're not liable. But if they didn't tell you to turn this off and you die because of low blood sugar because you didn't get alerts, then they're liable.
They're liable.
No, it's a great point.
Still sucks.
It does.
You will note if I am buying one of these, Mr. Marpet, I'm likely looking towards the Dexcom G7.
I would strongly recommend the Dexcom G7. Talk to my wife. I'll put you two together. You can chat about those.
Yes, please.
The libwebp saga continues.
Speaking of which, do you got to go WebP?
No, I'm good.
You WebP'd before the show?
I WebP'd before the show.
Okay, good.
Totally fine. Incomplete disclosures by Apple and Google create huge blind spot for zero-day hunters. So there was speculation that Apple, Google were releasing updates and that it was for the same vulnerability. I think we also saw Firefox release an update. I haven't determined if that was for the same issue. But basically now, I'll spare you all like the details and all the articles that were written and just exactly what they said and blah, blah, blah. They all basically all boil down on the same point that once upon a time, there was a vulnerability in libwebp. It turns out that's used by a lot of different software. And that was what forced Google and Apple to patch. Apple was was it a zero-click exploit that they were?
I believe so.
It was a zero-click exploit. There was the exploit in Chrome, and there was a blog from Resilient that did a good job of basically saying, hey, there's too much coincidence here. Like this all points back to what amounts to a supply chain vulnerability. A vulnerability in a library that gets included in other software and puts not just Apple and Google at risk, but everyone who's using that particular version of the library. Now, what's really interesting is that I think this is also a case where Apple and Google need to do a better job moving forward of doing a more coordinated disclosure and communicating with all affected parties, not just in cahoots with each other, going, Apple's like, there's, NSO group's going to use this to attack things. It's going to look really bad for us, so we need to fix it right away. And Google going, we should really fix this right away because a lot of people use Chrome. And like screw everyone else. If we tell everyone else, and at this they kind of do have a point, right? Like if we tell everyone else, then it's going to get out there as a vulnerability, and more people are going to exploit it. That's certainly the case. The larger and I've seen this, people who have described being in this situation where they found a really big vulnerability that affects a lot of different people. The more people you start including and notifying, the more likely the cat's out of the bag, right? Yep. Loose lips sink ships. I'm sure Jeff has some other kind of, analogy for
Loose
that.
Loose lips may sink ships. Is the official from the poster.
But basically, on the flip side of that, you also want to notify people so that people fix it. But again, those two things are at odds. So I feel like they should do a better job of a more coordinated effort. I don't know. What do you guys think?
It sounds like there needs to be a browser ISAC or something like that, or they have some sort of neutral group that talks about these types of things, so the word can get out to.
I think that's
the different
CERT
browsers.
I mean, in the U.S. it's CERT. Yes. Why they chose not to go through US CERT to do the rest of this disclosure? I mean, things like Skype, Slack, Signal, Keybase, Bitwarden, all the software, not just web browsers, is affected
So
by
CERT in the sense that there's a government agency that will take the information, disseminate it to the affected parties.
Yep. And or help research additional
rather
affected
than they
parties.
having to talk to themselves type of thing. Yeah,
Right.
That makes sense.
Right. So that like the same thing happened with the crack attacks under Wi-Fi.
yes.
With Matthew Van Oof and his team of crazy people, because they had this attack that would allow you effectively to machine the middle WPA2 networks, regardless of your encryption type. And just about every manufacturer on the planet was vulnerable. And in fact, Android and BSD were even more vulnerable because they did the right thing.
So Google says in response to Dan Gooden, many platforms implement WebP differently. We do not have any details about how the bug impacts other products. Our focus was getting out the fix to the Chromium community and affected Chromium users as soon as possible. It is best practice for software products to track upstream libraries they depend on in order to pick up on security fixes and improvements. I don't necessarily disagree. I think there needs to be a process that notifies people who might be using this particular library.
Yep.
Clearly, that was written by their general counsel.
Yes.
Yep. So, like, to me, this is a problem that software bill of materials could solve if you had the ability to do some automated sharing and some automated analysis and notification.
Right. But everyone
changes
downstream would have to generate an S-bomb, and those S-bombs would have to be stored in places that you could go
access
search.
or you're subscribing to a free S-bomb aggregator that has the S-bombs for the stuff that you want and so forth.
It's all
that is currently a very big problem in supply chain industry is because Josh, how do we distribute S-bombs right now? Hey,
I'm sorry, what'd you say?
I've got an S-bomb. Josh, do you need it? Yeah.
Okay, look, there are multiple schemes to distribute S-bombs. Unisys had their distributed bill of materials. That really didn't take off.
Yep.
That was actually a blockchain-based system with subscriptions and costs and everything.
Hey.
A lot of people just send them via email, just like you send a SOC 2 report.
Yep, that's it. Like, how do you send? Hey, Microsoft, or no, I won't pick on Microsoft. Hey, Paul, I need an S-bomb for PPWorks. Cool, I'll email it to you. Like that is the problem. And then, like,
so how do you distribute a SOC 2 report? An AICPA SOC 2 report.
Hey, you got that SOC 2 report, Josh? Can you email it?
Yeah, I'll email it to you. No problem.
Yep, exactly.
I mean, that's basically where we're at. A SOC 2 report is not supposed to be sent out except under NDA, the same as an S-bomb.
But
so I NDA you.
I mean,
arguably, problem we have, though,
it's the manufacturer's choice as to whether or not they NDA their S-bomb.
It is, but realistically they should, because an S-bomb is, hi, look at all our vulnerabilities. How are you doing today?
Yeah.
But along those same lines, though, when the vulnerability is in an open source project, it's on GitHub, at some point, the patch has to get pushed into the GitHub repo. At that point in time, the patch
should generate a new S-bomb.
Well, also the patch is public, which means the vulnerability is public. For those that want to go look, now that vulnerability is in fact public, and the cat's out of the bag.
Why is it public?
Because it's open source project. It's in GitHub, and the software's been committed.
Stop. Back up a step. All you said was I put a patch into my GitHub repository. I updated my code in my GitHub repository. How do I know there's a vulnerability from that patch?
Well, if he's saying if there is a vulnerability,
one
that has been yet to be undisclosed,
people could surmise that patch was a vulnerability.
Yeah. If you there's functionality patches, there's user interface patches, there's all kinds of patches that come out. You're going to only find out that patch was for a vulnerability if, one, it's in the release notes, or two, if you read the code. Right. How many people read the code?
I mean, everybody does, because that's the magic of open source security.
I'm going to smack you so hard. How much have you had to drink, man? Jesus Christ.
I haven't even finished.
Had one drink.
I haven't even finished that one. I'm only about a third of the way through.
I think you're about 6 bottles in, brother.
That's particularly dangerous, though, when there is speculation that leads people to go look. I agree, Josh. Like, if there's nothing, no buzz, no nothing, if a patch lands in a repo, is it really patched? Like if a tree falls in the forest? However,
No,
if there's a buzz, because we all of us talk like we're like gossiping in high school, and we're like, someone told me like there's a bug in like libwebp, like that people are exploiting. Like, I wonder if it's been fixed. Let's go look at the Git commits and see.
Well, we don't need to do that. WebP is a bitch. So.
Yeah, someone will do that. We should get someone to do that that wants to do that. But you know what I mean.
So what I did there.
There's a buzz, and so people go look, and this has happened, right? I'm not speaking out of turn. This has absolutely happened.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So I mean, and first off, by the way, in Discord, this is a great question that you should talk about, Paul. But and the other point is, I mean, would it be simple to say, oh, we added dark mode, and by the way, we fixed this really horrible vulnerability that we're not going to talk about and not list in the release notes. I mean, these things happen. Is it common? No, developers tend to document things properly. Thank God. But yeah,
not
Jesus,
always.
how much have you been drinking?
Yeah,
developers document things.
Developers don't. Well,
Jesus.
To address the point, though,
haven't you read the Phoenix Project?
it doesn't. You don't like the release notes are different from the commit messages. Like the source of truth here are the commit messages. So your release notes could say, "Hey, we implemented dark mode. Everyone go download the already pre-built, release. Like, don't worry about all that other source code stuff. Just go to the revisions page or whatever.
The releases page.
Releases page. Thank you on GitHub and just download the release. And the release notes don't talk about it. It's just dark mode. But somewhere publicly there was a commit for that. Granted, without any indicators of anything, very difficult to find. If there are indicators.
I mean, arguably, because all the developers document their code, it's probably along the lines of, "Oh shit, this is a serious vulnerability. We're fixing this because of CVE 2023."
Hopefully, they push it without saying that this is fixing a vulnerability at first.
I'm just poking Josh about all the developers, documenting the code.
So Paul, you're an advocate of hiding developers fixing vulnerable code. I'm glad to know that that's your stance.
If the internet is at risk, yes. Absolutely, but also this is a very complicated issue. How do you get?
I'm thinking of the 4-star general in charge of Space Force going, "The internet is at risk," or whatever. I mean, sorry, it's a little dramatic. I apologize, but it's really funny.
But there are times when the internet has been at risk. Like
I'm confused. I'm confused.
In a world where the internet's at risk.
I'm confused as to what Sam is doing, whether he's leaning over, dying, laughing, or
or just dying.
Yeah. Or
somewhere closer to just dying.
Okay. I mean, I hope you're right, and we're not killing you over there. Oh man.
How do you get the fix in the hands of the right people without tipping off the malicious actors?
Just the tip.
That's the. I feel like some people have talked about that in the past, and I feel like it's not a really good answer, but the answer is tricky.
This is a lot like the crypto wars, where they say you need to have a backdoor that only lets the good guys in, and somebody that doesn't have the good guy card, they can't get in.
Until the bad guys get the good guy card, and then it's all bets.
Of course.
Right.
Yeah.
I think what happens is they privately disclose the patch to the majority of folks that are responsible for, I'll use the term critical infrastructure to just talk about like the critical parties involved in that particular scenario. And like wait as long as possible. Okay, now you need to push. Now you need to push that.
Yep.
Is typically how it happens, which isn't perfect, but it's not horrible either. Lee Neely has joined us. Lee, welcome to the show.
Hey, it's good to be here. It's been one heck of a day, and I'm glad to top it off here.
Are you patching all your libp?
Oh, hell yeah. It's as soon as the vendors then click apply. I did patch my Safari.
That's good.
But Paul, I understand what you're saying, but I mean, Microsoft releases patches monthly. Usually there's security patches involved. Usually they're based on known vulnerabilities. The problem, I guess, is what you're saying is in the open source community, we don't have the usual processes in place for responsible disclosure and notification and CVEs being issued as a possible segue to another article.
Yeah, CVEs are a totally different issue. I think in the open source world, it's compounded by the fact that the source code is being patched, and that source code and patch is public. And it'd be very easy to identify and create an exploit.
Yeah. Arguably easier than the Microsoft, which are binary patches.
Which are binary, you have to reverse engineer. Yeah.
Right.
But I mean, we don't call it Exploit Wednesday just because. It's really because of exactly what you
Microsoft
described,
Tuesday,
right? They patched everything on Tuesday, and you reverse engineer the patch, and you're exploiting on Wednesday.
Well, the patches are released on Tuesday. You're lucky if you get them installed by Wednesday.
Very true.
Of the same week.
Exactly. That's why it's still called Exploit Wednesday.
The way Jeff has framed it, it should be called
fridges.
Successfully Exploited Wednesday.
Yeah, that's when you stock the fridges with Red Bull and just let them stay up all night patching stuff. Never goes wrong. Never.
Not once.
But I guess my question is, I mean, this is the problem that we're illustrating is a problem across the board, and everybody else deals with it somehow. Part of the CVE score is whether there's known attacks in the wild, and I don't know if they update that on Wednesday after they've rated and scored it on Monday before the patch was released on Tuesday. But at some point, you just got to go ahead and get the patch out, I would think.
Correct.
And just, let the chips fall and just tell people to do it as quickly as possible and hope for the best and tell them what to look for in terms of any possible exploitation in the interim.
And again, it's tricky and dependent on the situation. How, most times the process you described, Jeff, is totally fine. There are some times when the internet and people connected to it are way more at risk on a much larger scale that requires a different type of planning, perhaps. However, if the exploit is already in the wild, the cat's sort of already out of the bag anyhow. So,
right.
But just because one set of malicious actors knows that there's an exploit for this particular piece of software doesn't mean all of them need to know as well.
So true.
Let's move on.
Let's move on to CVE. Woohoo! And how it's really broken. It's just
What story? Whose wares?
my story number 15. The mystery of CVEs that are not vulnerabilities. This is a follow-up to the curl vulnerability, which was also underscored by a Postgres vulnerability, which ties back to 188 CVEs that were issued.
That was 138.
By some 130. Was it 38?
Either way, it's still 100 plus.
138. Larry's right, 138. There's actually a link to the CVE project GitHub account that shows these 138 vulnerabilities in open source projects. They're all entered in the CVE database on the same day. They were all for vulnerabilities that had already been fixed. I think that's one thing that a lot of people writing about this have kind of glossed over, that very, very important point, that what we believe is that someone has scraped some mailing list and Git commits that have already happened, right?
Yep.
They've already identified the bug. They've already fixed it, but it's documented. You can go crawl the web and find it. And they've gone and taken those, and they've gone and submitted a CVE for stuff that's already been fixed. And I think
So,
why?
clarification question, Paul. Have they already been fixed, or is the fix already available?
The fix is already available.
Okay.
But why? Why is this happening? Why would somebody? Oh, wait. Is it somebody affiliated with a vulnerability management product so that they can put labels on things?
So they can create a resume or a CV that says, "Hey, I found 138 vulnerabilities in all this software."
No. When you list when you find a vulnerability in an application, you list you link to a CVE which has a CVSS score, so you can prioritize the vulnerabilities. If there are vulnerabilities which do not have a CVE and do not have a CVSS score, they don't get put in the list or prioritized properly. I may be wrong. You guys worked at a
or
to
adjust the maths so that it's not appropriate or something of like.
Yeah. You know what I'm talking about, Larry?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it
So
could
I don't
be.
know. Is that what happened?
It could be you added those 138 and they're high severity. They are all high severity as well. so that it looks like whatever scanning
yeah,
product
so
you have
we-
finds a bunch of critical stuff.
Yeah, we talked about the specific curl vulnerability from the 2019, got submitted 2020, and now is like
Now it's a larger story. Now that
Right.
basically you've traced it back to an unknown actor. I don't want to
Right.
say threat actor or malicious actor, but an unknown actor.
right, and
That's
there was
responsible for all 138 of these that fit the same profile, high CVSS score in a previously fixed vulnerability where the patch has been available to
many
Just
years,
Point,
potentially
right?
many years,
For
yeah.
potentially years. Most of these were 2020 CVE scores. And so, but then they end up in disputed status, right? And what happens in disputed status? Who checks disputed status? I
Right.
still don't know who checks the disputed status.
Right. So Daniel, the curl developer, had some assumptions about who he thought might have submitted it because there was a conversation between he and another person that had discovered it, and that it really wasn't a buffer overflow,
Right.
or an integer overflow type of deal, and it manipulated some math that were pretty inconsequential. It got fixed in the next point release, and it was done. And that was the one that showed up, like, because the keywords were like buffer overflow or integer overflow, it automatically got like a 9.8 CVSS score. And then like, oh my God, curl is fucking busted. And like, no, this was fixed in 2019 because of this conversation that myself and one other person had, and it was good. So Daniel surmised that this person went and resubmitted this thing to add to their CV that, hey, I submitted this bug and I got a CVE. But that is clearly not the case.
Is it possible that this is actually a beneficial thing? Because if you were to run a vuln scanner and find that somebody hasn't put on a patch, if you didn't have the CVE, you wouldn't know how important that patch was. I mean, labeling old things so they're in your list and you know how dangerous they are could be important.
Agreed. But to that, they also have to be accurate.
Right. And in a lot of these cases, it was not accurate. That it was done not in collaboration with the project maintainer.
Oh, well, if it's not accurate, then there's no
Right.
excuse for it. I'm with you there.
Yeah. Also, the open source security podcast with Kurt and Josh, they've played in this space, I think, a lot more than they lead on, and have been involved. And so Kurt said that he was like part of the CVE board of directors or something. So they know way more about this than I do.
Really?
Yeah. And they go into detail about how if you submit to CVE, like they'll add it to the database, and it can be like a really crappy submission. And if you own that project, like you don't have a lot of control unless you're a CNA, which is a CVE numbering authority, which means I think you, Kurt and Josh,
You can actually
correct
issue.
me.
You can issue CVEs. Yeah,
Right.
they
You can
give
issue
you a
CVEs,
pool.
but I think you get to also get to triage them. Josh is the important point there. I believe that's the case. Kurt and Josh, correct me if I'm
No,
wrong.
you're
yeah.
correct. You're correct.
Yeah.
They issue you. Think of DHCP. They issue you a pool of numbers.
Right. Yes.
That are yours, and you get to hand them out to people that
Are submitting in.
Submit.
So you have more control
Submit
over the
CVEs to you.
process as a CNA. And I think that's what they were saying is that the dude who runs curl, like, he should just be also like a CNA to take more control over that. But also, like, people also don't want that headache
Right.
of becoming the CNA for that. Like Microsoft is a CNA, but
Right.
obviously, right? Because they have so much software. But
Right. And Daniel's just one guy.
no, they have so
working
many
on-
bugs. That's why.
well, that too.
Yeah. I mean,
Sorry.
if the shoe fits.
At more lines of code
shits.
equals more bugs, Josh. Let's just be clear here.
There's a direct relationship.
Yes.
No comment, Linux. Anyway, Linux. Excuse me.
Linux.
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 My name is Linus Torvalds, and I pronounce Linux.
It'll
So
never
what I-
catch on.
Yeah, it'll never catch on. This internet thing.
What I'm hearing is that
There's a market for
is-
like 5 computers in the world.
Yeah,
Who needs more than
There is-
640K
No,
right now?
but-
64K of memory.
if somebody submits us, whatever they call it, hoping that it becomes a CVE, it sounds like whoever the people are that are receiving it, they'll post it initially, and then while they're doing the research and the vetting and the validating. Is that what I'm hearing?
That
And
does
is that-
happen. That does happen sometimes, yes.
Okay. Because it seemed like that's what was happening when we were talking about this, however many weeks ago, with the original discussion about the curl CVEs, that everything was being investigated, being disputed. There were some sort of categories because we were looking it up on the air, and maybe it's done for the good. I'm trying to think of the scenarios where, because I think you implied in your write-up that maybe they're trying to DOS the CVEs or just trying to overwhelm them in hopes that something gets by them.
That could be.
That's one of the reasons.
That could be.
It seems like we should be monitoring this for the next couple months just to see how this all plays out.
One of the things that Kurt and Josh were talking about, because their discussion was very relevant to my story number 15 as it's being described today. I don't think that they knew that this particular incident with Curl was part of 138 CVEs, not knowing that they address a lot of the issues with CVE, and one of those being there is no public commentary or forum to have a discussion when a CVE is submitted. That right now, and they have like insider knowledge on this, because I didn't, not that it's like secret, right? But I didn't know how things internally at MITRE, handle the CVE process. And it's like a closed system that sits in a data center somewhere in MITRE. And they were proposing and suggesting that it be on a more public type system, such as GitHub, where the CVE submission could go into a GitHub repository, and then there could be like public commentary on it, crowdsourcing some of that information. I mean, that could be a double-edged sword, but like right now there's no discussion process, as is evidenced by here's 138 vulnerabilities, just go get them added to CVE and it's done. So I don't know.
It almost sounds like we should try to get somebody on from MITRE sometime to interview them, or that's willing to talk about, maybe not pin them down on this, but just talk about the process in general.
I agree. That person used to be Steve Christie, but he doesn't work for MITRE anymore. And when he was at MITRE working on CVE, he was on the show. And he's a great guy, by the way.
Well, maybe he could talk about it, and even though he's not a part of it anymore, or maybe we find his replacement and try to get them on.
I don't know. I don't know that you get Steve to talk about CVE anymore. I think he's kind of moved on.
Yeah,
he's probably tired of talking about it.
We can talk to Bob Martin, and find out from him.
Yeah, we need to figure out who it is at MITRE that is running CVE today. Someone out there who's listening to the show is screaming that person's name.
Please send us an email.
Yeah,
or Twitter or Discord or something.
Because that tied into another thing. This is my risk recasting thing, which is kind of one of my other.
That was in your teaser when a medium's really a high.
Yeah,
that's what you're getting to now. So please.
Is that no? I gotta find it now. Incomplete disclosures. NASA's Ukraine automating reconnaissance. CVEs are. I'm trying to find it. Now I like.
Right after you're done, I want to go on to one of Sam's stories, but let's do this one first.
Yeah. It's my story number 1. Sorry. GitLab urges users to install security updates for critical pipeline flaw. And I missed it because that's not really the interesting thing. Like the actual vulnerability to me wasn't the really interesting thing. The interesting thing was the flaw was assigned a CVE 2023-5009, CVSS score of 9.6, and the issue was discovered by a security researcher and bug hunter, Johan Carlson, who Github said is the vulnerability is a bypass of a medium security problem tracked as CVE 2023-3932 that was fixed in August.
Okay.
That's really interesting, though. Like, is this one CVE or is this 2 CVEs? Did they get it wrong? I don't understand. But how do we so the vulnerability is low or medium, but then folks spend more time analyzing it, and bam, it's a high severity issue. How do we deal with this? First of all, in a ranking system, And then
How many lower level vulnerabilities are there, Paul? And we can go back to our Tenable days, where whether it's medium or whatever, and medium's a really huge range, by
Yes.
the way. It's like what 4 to 7 or 4 to 8 or something like that. But they often say in the write up, this could lead to, while this is in and of itself isn't bad, it could lead to something bad. So if somebody's figured out
the
something bad,
the worst bad
makes the worst bad, then it would be a separate CVE.
Sure.
And you would tie it back to the original thing.
And this seems like one of those scenarios where
It's
it was
too-
medium,
Yes.
and then a little bit later, some folks figured out that it was really bad. And now what?
Well, I think there's 2, maybe 3, but at least 2 scenarios here where like a medium leads to a high, right? It's a jumping off or a stepping stone to a high. But there's also where like a medium is not really a medium, that after further research, that medium is really a high, right?
Yep.
I think this might be the first one where
I think it's the second one.
it says a bypass of a medium security problem. I don't know what that means.
And was it bypassing an unpatched problem or the patched problem?
Right. It's a good.
Bypassing you're overriding the prior flaw was a medium. They put in a fix for it, and bypassing the medium fix is therefore a high, I think is the logic.
Bypassing the fix. Yeah.
So that would be a separate CVE. Because
This happened with Heartbleed, right?
Correct.
At first, they had a disclosure, and they said, we don't know how dangerous it is. And it wasn't until they did research they decided it was really dangerous.
Right.
Yeah. So I was looking around, and this looked familiar, and the part that's hard is understanding the sequencing here, which I posted a quote out of the Sans News Bites because they said it clearly into Discord and as well as Slack, because it's like this vulnerability bypasses this, and I was getting it all backwards, so I had to look it up.
Right.
Yeah, I don't, whether we agree that the bypass of the fix for the medium is a high or not, that's a whole nother conversation.
Right. Yeah, I'm not. However they scored it is how they scored it. I guess I'm more on the okay, but now what? Right? Like this happened. Yeah. How do we deal with it? How do we make sure it doesn't fly under the radar? And how do we make sure we mitigate these potential increased severity situations that might occur? In other words, do we just patch all lows and mediums? Do we patch select lows and mediums? Is there a way to indicate in an official scoring system, hey, like Heartbleed, hey, this has the potential to be more severe, we think, but we haven't figured it out, versus like a lower medium. It's like, we don't have any indications that this could be worse than we've scored it, right? That's not saying that's in absolute, but there might be a delineation there that could help us with a medium that's a potential for a high.
I think it's just job security for all of us.
A little bit, Paul.
Yeah, I mean, it's like medical work. You do a test, you find some weird results. How bad is it? This is why you need a highly trained doctor to tell you how bad that is.
We're going to send you to a specialist.
It's not a science. It's kind of an art, judging what the worst risk is.
Might also be a little bit of magic too.
Yeah.
I mean, I hear what you're saying, Paul.
As long as there's no MTG cards, we're good.
What we do with it is the system that's in place, where occasionally somebody figures out a way to exploit even the fix.
And then we go back and patch it.
CVE is issued. Yeah. I mean, it's always. I mean, the nature of this is reactive and after the fact. The fact that the scores are mediums and not lows should give more urgency to doing something about them. By the way, that's changing in PCI. Because PCI in version 4, when it becomes effective next April, is no longer letting people just get away with, we'll fix the mediums and lows when we get around to it. They have to put a stake in the sand. PCI is not requiring that they fix it within a certain amount of time. PCI is requiring that they come up with a period of time that they're going to fix it.
Yeah, but I think that's reasonable. And my approach would be that we don't say, hey, we're going to fix all the mediums, right? Like, we're going to look at our entire environment and all these things that are between this certain score. We're just going to fix all of them. I think it needs to be more strategic than that. And it goes back to some of our conversations with Vicarious, right? Where you go, what's most critical in my environment? Like what do we, and there's a lot of criteria to define what's critical. We go, all right, for those systems, for those applications, we're gonna fix everything, because like a situation where something is recast could be real. That could be really, the impact of that could be really bad. Therefore, Chrome is installed on the majority of our desktops. It's used by everyone to access all of our sensitive information. Therefore, regardless of the severity, we're pushing these updates out, right? And maybe that's not true for every scenario, but that's the approach I like to see.
But that's the nature of recasting, which I don't know if we spend enough time talking about it. And again, PCI has allowed for this since 2010 with the release of version 2 of the standard, where they say, the vulnerabilities that you discover, particularly internal to your network, to your environment, you have the opportunity to do a risk ranking of the vulnerability based on whatever criteria you want to come up with, which implies take into account the severity, the criticality, the adjacency, the connected systems, because PCI has a concept of a card data environment, the environment that's the most critical.
Do they allow for compensating controls as well, Jeff?
Absolutely. 99% of the requirements, you're allowed to have a compensating control. There's a couple where no, you just have to do this, but most of them, you can have a compensating control. But compensating controls for not patching a vulnerability, that's for most organizations pretty daunting. And it requires doing other things. Mostly boils down to monitoring, frankly.
Could be monitoring.
Close attention to this.
There are exploit prevention for certain types of software and systems out there that I would consider a compensating control, memory protections, things like that. But
if you do your risk ranking or your recasting, decently, where you're taking into account, a lot of vulnerabilities require, they're internet born. They require certain conditions to exist, remote execution, that type of thing. And if you've got a system that's, layers deep in your environment that in theory isn't internet reachable or isn't directly internet reachable, that's something to take into account. And that's not a compensating control. That's just part of your risk ranking criteria. So it's not just the criticality or the sensitivity of the system. It's also your network architecture. It's what does it talk to? What are the connected? What do we talk about all the time? The trust relationships. If somebody could get here and exploit that, where else could they get in the PCI context, the ultimate goal of getting to card data? But you can apply that to whatever your critical systems are, whatever your critical data is, sensitive data. It's principles that we don't talk enough about, frankly, giving organizations the idea of what are valid risk ranking criteria. It's probably out there somewhere. I'm sure somebody's done the work on it. It's probably in a NIST document somewhere. But it would be good maybe for us to do a segment sometime where we connect the dots on that and just have a roundtable discussion about things that you should consider in terms of recasting before you just willy-nilly say, well, they're all mediums, we're just going to make them low.
Yeah, but I think we were mixing terms before. I like recasting is the external risk score gets recast to a new risk score based on your environment. I think what we're talking about here, when the severity changes externally, is a reassignment of the risk score.
Okay.
So I think our terminology needs to change slightly, otherwise people get confused.
See, and I thought recasting is when the spell didn't work the first time you did it.
You do a recast, yeah.
Okay.
Or
well,
when you're
recasting,
fishing, cast again.
Frankly, was a tenable term.
It was.
The other scan engine companies might have a different term for it. But whatever it is, where you get a scan result and you get a score, and you can tweak it, let's say.
Yeah.
And there was a way to do that in Nessus. I don't remember how to do it, but I'm sure I've talked to people from Rapid7 and Qualys. They have ways of doing that, and it's perfectly acceptable in a PCI context, as long as you're not doing it on the fly, as long as you've thought about it ahead of time and you have it documented, here's the criteria where we can change the severity level of a score because there's other environmental conditions in play. When CVSS version 3 came out, I thought it did a lot to try to factor that in, but there's still a lot of assumptions that are made that can vary from organization, environment, network, and all that. It's worth doing a deep dive on that sometime, I think.
So, Jeff, it's not just PCI. You can recast the risk of invulnerability in other contexts as well, and in that, it is still absolutely true. You have to have a process. You can't arbitrarily decide that you're changing everything that's a high to a moderate.
Right.
You've
right.
gotta,
Yep.
But because you've got to have local context. There's not as much risk to a high vulnerability on a system that's sitting there connected to nothing as opposed to it sitting on your entry point for your website.
Right.
So.
I want to change gears.
Sure.
We were gonna hit one of Sam's stories.
Yeah, that's actually where I
Okay.
was going.
All right,
Is
cool.
this Sam's story number 4? Because that's the one I read in the intro.
No, but let's do that one and then another one of Sam's.
Okay.
How's that?
How the cult of the dead cow plans to save the internet.
That's a good one.
I haven't dug into this. I mean, I've heard of Valid and their claims and all that stuff, but
Well, it's a great headline. It caught my attention just
Yes.
because of the celebrity of them. But the fact is, nothing is ready yet.
Wait until you see what
And-
happens next.
Yeah, they're going to make a product which will supposedly be a new open source in development platform to make more secure stuff, but it's not out yet. So it's going to be their Valid chat application will be coming out soon. So, this is just a teaser.
have they
don't
released
have-
any papers about the?
They talked about it at a conference.
They
didn't
did.
They've talked
Yeah.
about it, but I don't think anything's out yet.
So
Yeah, that's the thing.
this is the cliffhanger. Tune in next season to see how it comes out.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's just an idea right now.
Because I've seen where a lot of folks try to create a new secure chat mechanism, and it really just falls down when it comes to implementing the encryption protocols to support that chat. Security, cryptography, whatever has talked about it. We've seen, a number of different chat protocols basically fall down because reasons, right?
Well, Signal is pretty good.
Signal
I'm not sure you need
being one of
anything
the exceptions, right?
Yeah.
WhatsApp.
WhatsApp
Yeah,
uses
I mean,
Signal.
Is what
I
yeah.
read the article.
Reasonable.
They're coming up with yet another secure platform where everybody can chit chat.
Right. But
Sure.
the point being is that it is not monetized.
Right.
So there's no venture capital board, or there's no venture capitalist to answer to. There's no board. It's free. It's open source. You answer to the community, and it's not Facebook controlled. It's not Signal controlled. It's open.
What was kind of interesting to me in the article was they mentioned Mastodon and the whole
Blue
exodus
Sky.
from Twitter. When Elon Musk bought it, and
It's not Twitter
And I
anymore.
was
It's X.
using-
It's X.
The app formerly
X.
known as Twitter.
The
That
app
worked well for him.
formerly
Didn't it?
known, yes. Yeah. But I thought it was interesting that they talked about how complicated Mastodon was to implement, and I was using a Mastodon. I think it was a browser that eventually just crapped out on me, and so I'm like, I don't need to use Mastodon, so I just kind of stopped using it.
Yeah, the whole concept of federation is lost on most users, and might even be
Right.
lost on some of us, like me. I get it, but I wanted to join a community, so I joined InfoSec Exchange, which
Right.
Yeah.
early on, InfoSec Exchange was up and down, all over the place because it required funding.
Jerry eventually figured out his
Oh, yeah.
his uptime's been pretty good.
Yep, I haven't noticed it's been down, but then again, I also haven't been Mastodon a lot either. So
There's a whole nother aspect to Mastodon when you get into the role of moderator for a site. You get all kinds of crazy stuff that gets reported, and you got to figure out what to do with it.
Yeah, and I think Jerry and team does a great job of moderation.
Well, I'd like to claim that our team does all right too. that would be the DEF CON team.
Yes.
It's interesting the ideas that Jeff Moss comes up with and what he can do. It's kind of cool. That guy has some. I think that man has some free time on his hands.
Well, I mean, all he does is run a conference once a year.
Yeah, but
Yeah, little things.
yeah. Anyway,
Sorry.
I think it'll be
Sorry.
interesting to see what CDC comes up with.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's just. I think we'd all like to see it sooner than later, but absolutely, we'd love to see what they come up with and where it gets to.
Yeah. Well, I mean, arguably, where it's not financially motivated, it's a little bit hard to. You got to have somebody put some code to. I was going to say put some code to paper, but code to disk. And if you're not paying somebody, like,
It becomes altruism and gifted. Yeah.
Yep. Related for listeners, I've got at least two projects that I'd really like to work on, but requires some coding stuff. ESP32 would be awesome. Maybe some LoRa stuff and little game development type thing would be totally awesome. So if you're interested in working on a project, and obviously credit where credit is due, and maybe there's some minor incentives for getting stuff done. I just don't have enough hours in the day to figure out what I need to do to make this stuff work from a coding perspective, and I'd love some help. So,
Larry, let me ask a question. How many projects are you working at any given time?
I've lost count. My projects have projects. Yep.
I was just thinking to myself the other day, I'm like, damn, my projects have projects. I'm like, oh my God, I turned into Larry.
Yep. Well, so I picked up some gear to build a project, and it was going to be a lot harder than because of some of it was physical. The clock in the Weasley household from the Harry Potter that shows where everybody is.
Yes.
And there's multiple hands. I was going to build one of those clocks. And the clockworks do not exist to support 4 hands easily in a standard clock configuration. So you're effectively building your own clockworks mechanism with 4 shafts to be able to control that. And then you're using stepper
Which
motors.
means you need the lathe and the machining tools and the CNC to do that, which is a great excuse for you to buy your CNC machines. Not that you need an excuse, but this is so Kristen will kill you.
I'm missing the CNC, but I have a lathe and I have a mill and all of those things. So I'm getting there, but there's also some coding that goes along with it to figure out. And then we just recently stumbled upon a project that would help do some of that. And I'm like, well, hell, at this point, even if I could just stick a LCD screen in the damn clock and have the clock be controlled with that would be awesome. But still, I've got to figure out the ESP32 to do the Bluetooth low energy detection and then update the screen with graphics. And like, I have an idea. I'm an idea guy, and I don't necessarily have...
Wait. Are you detecting people's phones as they walk in the door to determine where they are?
That's a possibility. Or when they're not
Soho Sigint, that's part of Kismet now.
Yep, I've got some stuff. I found some other stuff too.
Okay.
Actually,
Talk
it
to
was
Russ. Talk to Russ.
It was one of the RF Hackers Discord folks that put something out so that you could tell when the cops are at your door because it detects the advertisement from police tasers, the Bluetooth low energy advertisements from police tasers. Yes.
Talk to Russ and Dragor, and they can get you set up with that stuff. That's not a problem.
I mean, getting me set up is great. It's like I got to have enough hours in the day to actually do it. Do it. So yeah, Josh, you ask how many projects. I think I've probably got about 30 projects sitting on the workbench in the workshop, and I've probably got 40 or 50 projects in various states of repair, computing wise, sitting in my office.
Ladies and gentlemen, can you hear the ADHD happening in live form on your podcast tonight?
Yes, you can.
It got off
So
and
another
walked around,
Sam
did a little
story?
dance. Yeah, another Sam story.
Oh yeah,
Which one of Sam's stories did you want to talk about?
13.
Oh.
Speaking of hardware projects.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, that goes with 12. I mean, CISA released the hardware bill of materials framework. We've been talking about the software bill of materials for a while, but you also need the hardware bill of materials if there's going to be Trojan hardware. And I said, well, how often does that happen? And it happened a month ago in South Korea. They,
Yep.
they had weather monitoring equipment, and the Chinese put Trojan hardware in it. Now, I remember when Bloomberg said that they were putting chips in the iPhone, and it was a huge scandal because it wasn't true. But apparently it really happened in South Korea, and that means you're going to need a hardware bill of materials to secure your hardware supply chain.
Yes, and Sam, I'm glad you put that in because I did see the hardware bill of materials framework, which was interesting because I've been doing a lot of work with 524B and the FDA stuff. And their original documentation said that you needed to do a C-bomb, which was inclusive of an H-bomb and an S-bomb.
What about an F-bomb?
I mean, when you were going through all these bombs, you were definitely dropping some F-bombs.
part
you
of
need
the
an
process.
F-bomb.
Yeah.
You need a firmware bill of materials.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, and I think it applies even more now that we're blocking all these Chinese suppliers like Huawei. So you're going to ask the question: are there any Chinese chips in there?
Yeah. Well, hold on. But how do you
Don't get
get
me
an
started.
answer? But how do you get an answer to that question? How do you validate the hardware S-bomb? Do you have to? Is it a visual inspection, or are you relying on firmware and/or software to enumerate all the hardware? And what if the firmware has been tampered with and is just lying to you that there's no spy chip in this system?
So I mean, if it's a visual inspection, you think about all of the FTDI serial chipsets that were like crazy and got cloned and their own actual property was stolen and made fake ones that didn't work just quite the same way as the real ones, so they could disable them in drivers. I mean,
because anyone can screen print anything on a chip.
Yep.
If you're just visually inspecting it, you know what my hack was, because my eyesight is terrible. I take a picture of it with my phone. Yep. And I bring it into Google Photos, and I use the copy to text feature.
Interesting.
And it, as best as it can, it'll pull all the text off of the image, which also is the model number
the chip
on the chip.
numbers
That's
and
how
all
I
stuff.
pulled that eMMC part number, and then it gives you a list of all the text that it pulled, and you can actually click on the chip with the model number on it,
Right
and
click in Google
and copy and paste, and Google.
That's it. That's a good trick. I like it because that. I mean, I'm a fan. A couple of them that you might not have had, but you can make the. Typically, they're laser engraved now.
Yep.
So if you have some of that white toothpaste, and you take a little toothpaste and you wipe it across, it will fill in the divots to make them a little bit more contrasty.
Oh, interesting.
Thank you, Josh. Right, and then your chips spell minty too.
And your chips are minty, But also, they look like there was a QR code on some of the chips as well. I couldn't get it to render in my phone.
They're different. They're very much a different format than what we're used to for QR code stuff.
There's like 70 different QR code formats, and some formats that look like QR code that are not actually QR code.
I see.
So
but all that speaks of so what we're saying is validating the hardware bill of materials is super difficult, in my opinion.
Right. So it's visual inspection, and then potentially you're doing code audit. And then you're doing code audit or penetration testing or something of the like. And
to Jeff's point, labor intensive.
I mean, and then, so Sam, I want you to continue with story number 13 a little bit here, because I might have some. I want to stand on a soapbox a little bit here.
Well, I haven't got a lot more to say about it. I just was the first time I really see a clear, verified case of this happening. There have been rumors of it many times. Like there was a rumor years ago that when Israel attacked a neighboring country, their radar failed because it had Israeli chips on it that would not detect the Israeli missiles. And, everyone's worried about this. You could put hardware Trojans in all your hardware, and how would you ever know? Unless you take it apart with acid and look at it with an electron microscope, you don't really know what's in those chips.
The Manchurian microchip.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
And now apparently it has been happening, although not that sneakily. I mean, I think these, but they say they found malicious code embedded in the chips. So I wonder how they caught it. It sounds like it was not as easy as just looking at the number on the chip.
Yeah, it sounds like what ended up happening here is that those chips were, it says it steal information through radio frequencies, but then how does it get it back out? So I would argue that they probably caught the exfil, whether that be through RF or connecting the device to a network to be able to grab that data. So I would venture to guess they caught the exfil and then did the analysis.
Yeah, well, they're doing a hardware audit of 10,000 other pieces of equipment made in China to try to see if they can find more of these, and that results should be coming out later this year. So I think this is a developing situation, and we're going to be hearing more about these hardware Trojans.
Agreed. So let me posit something to the group and have you guys, you folks, expound on it a little bit. You know, we're talking here Chinese chip manufacturers, and like there's a big push to ban, like, oh my gosh, you shouldn't use these Chinese chip manufacturers because they're bad and they're going to put hardware backdoors. But what about those manufacturers that have taken a stance of, hey, look, we had a pen test done. Here are the results of the pen test. Here's our observed commitment to security through all of these measurements and so forth. Oh, and by the way, all of the code that runs on this chip, here's a software bill of materials to indicate where we may still have some failures, and being completely transparent about it. You know, thoughts about like that type of manufacturer.
But you still don't know if any of that is true unless you can audit it somehow.
Okay.
Those documents could just be lying.
Sure. All right. So let's add a number, something else to that the folks that are generating those S-bombs and have done that pen test are from arguably a trusted partner.
Right. I mean, that's essentially the ISO 27000 thing. That's supplying where you use trusted manufacturers, and therefore you don't take any stuff from China.
Well, I mean, in this case, it is someone in China that is using a trusted partner to audit all of the code and the binaries and all of that type of stuff.
How could you trust anybody from China? Because their government is very powerful, and their government could surely coerce them into doing a bad thing and lying about it.
True.
What I'm hearing, Larry, is it's not that the hardware has a backdoor or not. It's whose backdoor is it?
Okay, fair enough.
And it's also, from a viewpoint of compliance, how can you say, I'm confident there is not a backdoor in here, and therefore this thing is safe to use for this high security purpose? Sure. How can you say that?
Sure, and high security has its implications and such there too. And it was interesting. And it was interesting for me in that I may be involved in one of these situations. And if you do enough Googling on the internet and know who I work for and know what situation I'm involved in, because it's a matter of public record now, but I'll let you do the digging on that.
You should subscribe to his OnlyFans page. It's
totally naked circuit boards all over the place.
In the show notes from about 5 minutes ago when we made the announcements as to where you're speaking, just FYI.
Right.
You don't have to dig that far.
Yeah, you literally do not have to dig that far. But if you go dig for Google and look for some press releases, you'll figure out sort of where I'm getting at this by not trying to put words in people's mouths. Because I also can't advocate for any of that stuff. I can only advocate about the process that certain companies may be trying to follow to prove that. I forget where I was going with this, but
you can never prove a negative. Number one.
But so the big one is like we're all over poo-pooing Chinese companies that could potentially have backdoors, but are not necessarily being as transparent as they could be. So ban all Chinese chip manufacturers. Ban all chips made from China.
Good luck with that.
Exactly. Great. Yeah. Take your Android device and your phone and your laptop and go put them in the trash can. Because there are chips made in China. Yeah, the iPhone 17 uses a specific cellular modem manufactured in China.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So, like, that's
my whole point is that this is a risk quantification and decision-making exercise.
Sure.
You want to do this carefully. You put the data that you care about behind various walls from different manufacturers doing different things, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But realistically,
realistically, all you can say is we haven't heard about any flaw in these chips. We don't have any reason to believe there's a flaw in them. That's the kind of thing you can say.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Well, and here we are all worried about China when the Snowden leaks were analyzed, and there's, not concrete evidence, okay, but like implications that there were other Cavium CPU chip manufacturers that may have been approached or may have been involved with U.S. federal government agencies to perhaps make it easier to guess the random number is kind of the what I was reading kind of about.
This brings, and to the last story too, this brings a quote from a coworker. Technology shaming is not restricted by hypocrisy.
Right. Yeah.
No.
Right.
Again, it's whose backdoor are you worried about?
Right.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up the Snowden article.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say a whole lot about it, but I will say that I thought it was interesting that in the entire article, there was, from what I could tell, and I tried to read the whole thing, there was no mention of anything related to what Snowden was allegedly outing, which was that NSA was monitoring and capturing, U.S. citizens, which is what we usually talk about in the context of Snowden. There was the three things that were disclosed, the Cavium being one of them, and the other two was it Tibet?
One was the NSA compromised lawful Russian intercept infrastructure called SORM. The NSA archive contains slides showing 2 Russian officers wearing jackets with a slogan, "You talk, we listen." The NSA urges you to use compromised keys of a lawful intercept system in Europe. And they compromised the PRISM system. The NSA listed the Tibetan...
No, they didn't compromise the targets of PRISM.
Were the Tibetan government in exile. Correct.
All right.
Mm-hmm.
That's where I won't comment but I'm like, that's kind of what NSA does. They monitor the rest of the world. So, why does that come as a surprise to anybody?
That spies be spying? I mean, is that...
Spies going to spy?
Spies going to spy.
Spies going to spy.
We heard you like spies, so we put spies in your spies?
And I need to spy. And look, you're already spying on people, so can I just spy on your spying stuff? That kind of sounds like what was happening
That's
here.
the whole concept of echelon and NS. Never mind. Anyway,
I heard you like spying, so I put spies in your spies.
Right? Kalia was the other one, which was a legal way for agencies.
That's the lawful intercept.
Yeah, to actually intercept. And NSA was like, oh, well, hey, you're already spying on people, so can you just give us some of that spying kind of thing? That's exactly what it was.
That's the concept where the MI5 or MI6 hands over all the U.S. intercepts to us, to NSA, and NSA hands over all the UK intercepts to them. So nobody does any spying in their home territory, but everybody just has cooperation with everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it's the other interesting thing. Well, Jacob Applebaum claims to have analyzed the 99% of
the Snowden
leaks. Like supposedly
the 99% that wasn't released.
That wasn't released. Is what he analyzed and came to these conclusion. I thought towards the end of the article, they talk about where the leaks were initially when Snowden was in Hong Kong, who was there when he was in Hong Kong, right? It was Greenberg and Petraeus and one other person. And what they did with the leaked data after that. And some people were like, oh, we destroyed it. Some people were like, oh, it's locked up in a New York Times, a vault in a journalist outlet somewhere. And then I think the UK government had a copy and destroyed some of it. There was a whole...
One time it was on BitTorrent.
Yeah.
I mean...
But allegedly only 1%.
But allegedly that was only 1%, Sam.
That was the 1%, the BitTorrent?
Yeah.
Allegedly.
It was pretty big.
Where I think of it now is that at the end of Indiana Jones, the wheel and the big crate, that's where the Snowden leaks went.
Yep.
Yep. Exactly.
That's what I was thinking. But it is regardless of where you fall and have formed opinions on it. It was a super interesting read. I don't think anything groundbreaking here, but again, interesting to read nonetheless.
We should.
There's a lot of secrets out there, and we don't know them.
Cooties rat semen.
That's why they call them secrets, Jeff.
Yep, that's right.
Speaking of secrets, we should probably think about wrapping this up and get to our pre-recorded interview here.
Yes.
Yeah.
What do I have as a tip for people? Oh, a follow-up. The last thing, follow-up on It was Ukrainian hackers who are believed to be behind the free download manager supply chain attack. So Kaspersky Lab said we became aware of a past security incident from 2020. This was the one that we went to free download manager, and certain people who downloaded a Debian package got a backdoor deb package, but it was only 1% of the downloads. It started in January 2020. Researchers believe that it was Ukrainians and Russians that were involved in this malware. My thing is, could it be Ukrainians targeting Russians? Because this was a very targeted attack. Like 1% of the people that downloaded this were attacked. And this being like so narrowly targeted, was it like, hey, if the Russians want to download stuff from here, like maybe we give them a little something extra in there, and then the Russians have something extra the Ukrainians have access to.
If coming from Russian IP, then
yeah, that was my purely speculation, which is the wonders of this podcast and all podcasts, is we can speculate, conjecture, kind of thing.
Put on our tinfoil hats or take them off, as the case may be.
Right. And I mean, if they did that, like, okay, that's cool. Like, if that's a means to an end, I support that. That's fine.
Yep.
Anyway, cool. That was. There's more stories in there. Make sure you go check them out. From all of us, actually have stories in there. So make sure you go check the show notes. Show notes for this show are securityweekly.com/PSW 800. With that, we will, coming up next, pre-recorded interview with Kayla Williams from Devo. Stay tuned.